This episode is brought to you by U.S. Eagle Federal Credit Union.
Stranded at the roadside is not where you want to be. That's why you pay extra for roadside assistance coverage. But what if you didn't have to pay extra for it? U.S. Eagle Perks checking comes with roadside assistance coverage, 24/7 when you need it. Learn more at gettheperks.org. Checking that gives you more, because people mean more at U.S. Eagle.
Terms and conditions apply. See U.S. Eagle for details. Federally insured by NCUA.
And we are live. Welcome everybody to another amazing live stream of True Consequences podcast. I'm going to be joined here in a minute with an extra special guest, but before that, I need to thank my sponsors for today, which is U.S. Eagle Federal Credit Union and the Downtown Growers Market. You can access local food at the Downtown Growers Market using your EBT or SNAP benefits. And the best part about that, they're going to double up your food bucks, which means you're going to get to spend half the money and get twice as much amazing local food. So go check them out. They are every Saturday from 8 to noon, Robinson Park, 8th and Central. And while you're at it, go check out the rail yards. There's some amazing local crafts and local vendors. Thank you so much to the Downtown Growers Market, to U.S. Eagle Federal Credit Union, and Southwest Labs for sponsoring today's show. So thank you so much for joining. Hey, Kaleidoscope of Crime, thanks for tuning in. I'm very excited to bring a friend of mine on here. His name is Tz. He's the host of the incredible show Tapes from the Darkside. If you haven't seen it, you are definitely missing out. It's a well-done show. I'm going to let him talk about it because I am a huge fan of his, and I'm going to bring him on here in just a second. Let's see here. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. Got people saying hi. Hey, Patty. Hey, Jackie. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your show and the format of it? I think it's a really cool concept, and I think my listeners would really like it.
Yeah, sure. So Tapes from the Darkside started it about a year ago, right when the pandemic was getting into full swing, which was kind of a bizarre experience. Try to create something, put something out into the world when this other crazy destructive force was going on. I think everybody relates to how surreal that experience was and still is. But I was just telling Eric before we went live that I started in the film industry and have always been a fan of horror movies and shows like Tales from the Darkside and Tales from the Crypt. And so my initial idea was to do an anthology type series where each episode we would go into a different crime, something like that. And I found this case. And once I found this case, the first season of Dylan Redwine, kind of became obsessed with it. And, I knew this was the case that I wanted to do the first episode on. But when I researched it, I realized, after I wrote the first episode, that I wanted to go way more in depth than one episode would allow for, which kind of botched the name, but I really liked the name. We already had Tapes from the Darkside. We had a logo. So I was like, maybe this will be 2 episodes, 3 episodes. It ended up being 9 episodes with a couple of bonus tie-in ones from Patreon. So yeah, the Eric invited me on to talk about the Dylan Redwine case, which I think you said you kind of have a slight acquaintance with, Eric.
Yeah, so not necessarily a connection to it, except for the fact that it is very close to New Mexico, and I'm sure you know this. My show is specifically about New Mexico cases, but I also do a little bit, outside of New Mexico, talking about the Four Corners area, maybe like West Texas. I haven't really got into a bunch of those cases, mostly because there's so much in New Mexico that I haven't really had to reach out that far. But Dylan Redwine was definitely one that it broke my heart hearing about. And I'm very passionate about cases involving children, um, because of my past, because of my history, because of my brother's case. So it it touched me, and I wanted to cover it on my show, but I also wanted to do it justice. And so this was like a no-brainer for me, because you did such a phenomenal job diving deep into it and really looking at all of the pieces of it. And so, we're not going to get to that level of detail tonight. And so what I would like to say to people watching and people listening later on to the show, go check out that first season of Tapes from the Dark Side, and then listen to all the other seasons too. I think you're on season 4 now, right?
3, almost
3.
Yeah.
Season 3. Sorry about that.
No.
I'm going into season 4, so that's on my brain for my show. But Dylan's case is tragic, and he's still not really had justice. I mean, I think that there's progress, but COVID definitely slowed things down in the case. And so thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise in this.
Yeah, thanks, man. I just realized my music is playing on this. Alexa, pause.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a little mood music.
I was so zoned out. Yeah, we got.
So Tanya
copyright
from
claim.
Kaleidoscope of Crime was asking, is it just a podcast, or do you have a YouTube channel as well?
So I do have a YouTube. It is sadly a little bit neglected, but I really want to do a visual adaptation. And so I've kind of started that. I'm getting better at using Premiere, Adobe Premiere. But yeah, the first 4 or 5 episodes you can watch or listen if you search Tapes from the Dark Side on YouTube. And the next episode that is going up is probably our most technically, however you say it. But yeah, I spent more time on the editing. And then I realized I was neglecting the audio, which Eric knows when you have a one-man band of a podcast, you got to do everything. So if you throw yourself into one area, you all of a sudden, I realized, oh my God, I'm not editing. I'm not recording new stuff. So I had to put it on the back burner. But eventually we're going to release the whole first season on YouTube. But if you like that experience where you can see the subtitles, which I really like, I'm a subtitle fan. So yeah, you can check them out on YouTube and Facebook even. We uploaded them to Facebook video. But yeah, so it's as far as like when I first got grabbed by the Redwine case, is it's one of those cases that's very easy to kind of do an elevator pitch for. From the very first headline, I was like, what the hell is this case? So a 13-year-old boy in Colorado named Dylan Redwine, he had discovered pictures of his father. Allegedly, this is not, I'm trying to think if this came out in court. Well, no, it's pretty much verified in the court documents that Dylan at least claimed he found pictures of his dad eating feces on his dad's laptop. This was over a summer beach vacation. Dylan and his brother Corey found these pictures. Obviously, were very disturbed. His dad was going through a divorce with his mom at the time, so there was already some tempers and animosity between them. And Dylan was court ordered to go visit his dad over a Thanksgiving weekend. Obviously, finding these pictures, he kind of wanted to get some distance from his dad. Chelsea, what's up? But he really didn't have a choice, and his mom didn't have a choice unless she wanted to face the legal repercussions of not following the custody order. So Dylan got on a plane, flew from Vallecito, Colorado is where Mark lived. And they
Close to
had
Durango.
Yeah, close to Durango. I think it was the Durango airport he flew into. And his mom was living in Denver at the time, I believe. They had moved to Denver. I might be getting that wrong, but I think. But anyways, an hour away, he gets to his dad's house, and the very first night he disappears, and he's never seen alive again. So, and as we unravel the web of details, I just got more and more fascinated. I think we all can relate to like being on Wikipedia and you find something that's just like, wait, you go deeper and deeper, and then you find the little side articles and videos. And so I just became obsessed with it. And the tapes and Tapes from the Darkside comes from, well, obviously the play on Tales from the Darkside, but also I really wanted to try to tell the story using as much original audio as I could. So we play Dr. Phil clips and interviews and news clips, and I tried to edit it so it's not boring. I tend not to like when it's just like a 5-minute 911 call and there's no editing, but yeah, so it's a weird twisted tale of murder and fetishes and lies and deceit.
And he was only 12, is that right? When he disappeared?
I always forget if
13?
it was 12 or 13. I believe he was 13 when he went missing, but it might have been 12. He went missing in 2012, so I always
that confuses me too. Yeah.
But if you want to, we could play the first clip. So this was an interview with his father, Mark Redwine, who later became the main person of interest. And I asked Eric if he could just play about 30 seconds of the beginning of this interview. That the full video is up on YouTube. You can watch it. It's about 40 minutes long. And we play a lot of clips in the actual show. But from the first time I saw Mark Redwine talk about Dylan, it didn't make me think, oh, this guy's guilty. I usually don't think that way. I know some people have really good instincts. And in general, I'll be totally honest, I have horrible instincts. I'm not good at telling when people are lying to me. I usually, because of that, I know that about myself, I'm very slow to be like, oh, I got the vibe from this guy. But something felt off. So, anyways, if that's what I'll lead into.
We'll let the watcher and listener think about what they think about this when we play it right now. So Here we go.
We were inseparable. I mean, anywhere I was, he was right there beside me. He would come to me before he would go to his mom. I think in many ways that was part of the problems that developed in our relationship, was because while she was earning a career, it was very difficult for her to lose sight of the fact that she wasn't there bonding with Dylan the way I was. And I think that was a huge problem for her. Mm. And I think that has been a problem for her for a long time now.
Yeah. Wow.
What do you think, Eric? Do you have an instinctual reaction to that? I'm just tweeting it or putting out an Instagram story.
No problem. It's hard for me, I don't really like to speculate about things, but one of the things that strikes me about this clip in particular is he seems to be deflecting the attention away from himself. It's pretty subtle, but he starts talking about kind of Dylan's mom being not a great mom, which in my mind is a red flag. And so is this before Dylan was found?
So I believe this was in, actually, does it say on the YouTube? My instinct was to say it was about 2 months after Dylan went missing that he sat down and did this full interview, but it might have been sooner than that. So they uploaded it on February 5th of 2013, which would have been about 2 months after Dylan went missing. But I think actually this was within the first couple weeks after Dylan went missing. They did this interview.
So that's what kind of bothers me about it is knowing that context, it does seem like 100% deflection.
Yeah.
Like, stop looking at me. Let's start talking about other people and the horrible things that they're doing. it just didn't really sit well. And that's only a 30-second clip. I'm sure there's so much more to that interview than what we just saw, but that's what struck me.
I look like I'm not paying attention to you.
And I'm making all kinds of noise here.
Putting out this Instagram story. Okay, cool. Telling people to come watch the stream. Yeah, that was kind of my first reaction too. And of course, like I've had, interactions where I've been under the microscope for something I've said, and your initial thing is to clam up, start saying shit that sounds stupid. And so I was, when I saw this, even though it raised red flags for me as well, I tried to be fairly open-minded to what the facts were of the case. And we also have a clip of Elaine. So Elaine Redwine, or Elaine, I always get this confused, Hall. I think her middle name is Hatfield, and I think she might be Elaine Hatfield Hall, but it might just be Elaine Hall. But anyways, she remarried, so she Mark is her ex-husband. They were actually separated, I believe, almost 2 years before Dylan went missing, and this is an interview right around the same time as Mark was giving his interview, and I think it just gives us a good kind of contrast. Not to say one, responded. That's another thing that I think is I try to keep in mind, is that people who are grieving somebody going missing or someone dying, they didn't know he was dead yet, but they can have very strange reactions to things. And I think as a public, we're too quick to judge sometimes. But for what it's worth, this is Elaine's interview with the press.
So do you think something happened Sunday night or Monday?
I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question for me to answer. I know I didn't hear from him after Sunday night, and that just makes me wonder when this really happened.
Have investigators given you any clues on what direction they're going in?
Not really. I mean, it's an open investigation, and that's what they tell me all the time.
Does it make you mad as a mom that they're not telling you everything?
Well, I mean, there's other things that make me mad as a mom, like the fact that Mark lost Dylan. That makes me very mad. And the fact that he won't speak to us, and the fact that he won't answer our questions, and the fact that every time I try to contact him, he's accusing me of harassing him. That makes me more angry. The cops wouldn't be in this position if it weren't for, Mark just losing Dylan. I mean, Corey and I have tried to keep in touch with him. We ask him to help us in the search, and he's just very difficult and being very evasive, and that makes it extremely frustrating.
Wow. You can definitely hear the heartbreak in her voice, the frustration. And I thought it was interesting that you brought up the fact that people can have very different reactions. I think it's important for everyone to consider that, because not everybody grieves the same way. Not everybody responds to trauma or stress the same way. Some people are very emotive, like me. Some people are not. Some people shut down in response to those kinds of situations. So, but I can definitely hear the pain in her voice, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
it's really heartbreaking.
That was one of the kind of hardest things to kind of cope with doing a lot of research on true crime, is that it's not, I come from film, as I was saying, where everything is, even if it's based on a true story, you're dealing with actors and a script writer and a director, and even if it's a very intense emotional scene, it's police sirens going on. It's at the end of the day, we all know that it's not real, but the complete opposite with true crime, obviously. It's very heavy. It's that her going through her interviews over and over again was very emotionally. It does, when you hear her voice, it's, if she is faking that, then she needs an Oscar, because I've never seen anybody fake that kind of emotion that well, unless you are a complete psychopath, I guess, is a possibility.
Yeah.
So would it be okay with you if I kind of just really briefly took you through the night of the disappearance?
Sure. Yeah.
I was thinking of just kind of laying out a timeline. So Mark picked Dylan up from the airport. They got McDonald's. They had a little disagreement over where they were going to eat. Mark wanted to sit down at a restaurant, and Dylan just wanted to get drive-through McDonald's, and kind of sounded like he just wanted to get away from his dad as quickly as he could, keeping in mind he had just found these pictures just a few months ago. I think it was the first time seeing his dad since then. So he already wanted to go to a friend's house the very first night. And Mark was like, you're here for Thanksgiving break. It wasn't Thanksgiving yet. I think it was Monday. So they had a few days before. But he was basically like, you're not going to leave your very first night, which seems reasonable. I mean, to me, maybe. So they rented a video. They watched a video at home. And then that's where we the trail ends. Just, the phrase, the trail went cold. I mean, it's just like there's no more evidence. At 9:37 p.m., he sent a text to his friend, and that was the very last time he used his phone. His mom says that was strange because he lived on his cell phone. It was 2012, so it was like cell phones were pretty popular. Texting was very popular. Mark says they didn't get good reception, which that makes sense to me, possibly why maybe he wasn't texting, but there was also Wi-Fi, so he's texting from the iPad. So anyways, you can see how you can get into the weeds of the details and see, who's lying, who what sounds reasonable. But the facts are 9:37 was his last text. So he could have gone to bed. In the morning, Mark woke up early, claims to have woken up early to go run errands. He had to pick up a paycheck. He said he had to go do a couple other things, and he tried to wake Dylan up. He claims at 7:30-ish, tried to wake Dylan up to go to drop him off at his friend's house because Dylan wanted to go to his friend's. Oh, that was our first reset. You have me back?
You're back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a power adapter thing for anybody watching. But so claims he tried to wake Dylan up, tried to get him to, come on, I'll drop you off at your friend's house while I go run errands. And when he came home, he claims Dylan was gone. It was like 11 a.m. He thought, well, he probably walked over to his friend's house or something, playing in the woods. Seems fairly reasonable to think something like that. Jamie says, I don't believe he made it through the night. That's kind of, once you get all the facts, it's kind of the conclusion I come to as well. Mark took a nap around 11 a.m. Woke up, started, I think he tried to text Dylan. I think he tried to call his friends and then realized that they hadn't seen him. Claims, this is what he's claiming. And then that's when he starts to get worried. There's a lot of things, it's not really appropriate to laugh, but there's a lot of things that Mark does that makes you kind of shake your head. And one of the first things is Dylan obviously has just flown on a plane flight to see him from his mother who lives, 100 plus miles away. And he texts his mom saying, have you seen Dylan? So obviously that's a very strange thing to do. And he claims he didn't want to call her because he knew she would freak out. And if we do presume innocence, which I think if you are starting from the very beginning, you should hypothetically presume innocence. So you could say, okay, maybe he thought his kid was, with a friend and he didn't want to freak his mom out. So he waited till the last possible minute, then texted his mom, instead of calling her because they had a strained relationship and maybe he didn't want to get her going or knew it would end up in a fight. So there is some plausible understanding there. But that, as we know, that is where the trail went cold until 2013. Let's see when it was. It was June of 2013. They found some of Dylan's remains in the woods on a mountain called what was the name of the mountain? Forget, but it was in Vallecito. That was another thing that brought some questions. Was Mark was very convinced that Dylan was not even in Colorado. He had made up his mind that it was an abduction, which seems strange to everybody because all of Dylan's belongings were gone. If anything, it sounded like maybe a runaway case, because his backpack from Mark's house was gone. His clothes were gone. He was gone. And it seems strange that if somebody abducted him, they would make him go upstairs, pack his bags. It seems off.
Yeah, not likely.
It seemed like either malicious for some reason or the runaway thing. And that's what police said at first. Are you sure you didn't run away? This really sounds like it could be a runaway case. And that's where we get to another. I'm trying to think how to kind of. Oh, did I lose you, Eric? Hello? Eric? I think we lost Eric.
I'm back.
Oh, he's back.
I don't know what happened there. That was weird.
No worries. So, well, anyways, before I blabber on, let me just get your reaction and your thoughts on.
Are we playing the next clip now?
I was just going to get your take on just anything before I just kept blabbering.
Yeah, so I know they found his body about 8 miles up the road. His remains about 8 miles up the road from his dad's house.
Well, let me jump in real fast. I ask you to talk and then I cut you off. It was actually like 1 mile from his dad's house, and you could actually see the site of the remains from his dad's front porch.
Oh, wow.
Which was just another thing that brought questions to everybody's mind.
Jamie's asking if it was Middle Mountain.
Hey, Jamie, coming through. Middle Mountain, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm definitely disturbed by the have you seen Dylan text? That's weird. The phrasing of it doesn't make any sense to me, especially because he's supposed to be with his dad. So I just feel like a more appropriate response would have been, have you heard from Dylan?
And I want to correct myself. It might have been that. It might have been, have you heard, or have you gotten any contact? It might have been, yeah. Okay. Which is still strange, but it's less strange than have you seen him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I giggle when I get anxious sometimes. So the giggle was not about this case at all. So forgive me for that.
Same here.
Yeah. It's definitely concerning. And then it seems suspicious that he was found so close to his dad's house. And also, like you said, if he was abducted, there would have been, it doesn't make sense that somebody would say, now let's go get all your stuff and take it with us. Most abductions happen really fast, and then you never see that kid again. If it's truly one of those stranger abductions. So there's definitely some weird, fishy things happening in the timeline as you've described it.
Yeah, and You know, I really tried to see if there were any alternate possibilities. And Jamie says, I'm personally wondering if the site was chosen so he could look out at the site as a kind of trophy.
Ooh,
Ooh, that's a dark thought, but it is
very dark.
plausible. Absolutely, it is plausible. So if I'm trying to find, if I'm a defense attorney, which I'm not, by the way, in any sense, but if I was trying to kind of present an alternate case, the one thing that after all my research and this season that I come back to often is Dylan, according to one interview I found on YouTube with a couple of his friends, is that he had hitchhiked before. Now his friends are all around 12 or 13 years old, and the way it wasn't like any kind of formal interview, it was during a search kind of thing that was going on, and one of the moms was just talking to the kids about Dylan, and the kids were kind of talking about how they hitchhiked sometimes, and Dylan would put his thumb out and he would jump in people's trucks sometimes. So say his dad gets up early in the morning, 7:30. His dad's gone. He wants to get to his friend's house. He's walking down the road. I could see it, you know, it seems possible. But the thing that comes to mind is like, well, did he pack his bags because he just wanted all his stuff at his friend's house? You know, I think at first they thought a fishing pole was missing, but then they found that fishing pole. So that, I guess that doesn't really throw a loop. But there is later evidence that we find out, and I don't want to, I mean, with any true crime case, it feels weird to say a spoiler because it's somebody's real life. So it's like, what's the matter with just telling the facts? But there is evidence later on that even further implicates Mark, which I won't mention specifically. But yeah, what do you? I mean, it's kind of awkward to just put you on the spot to say, does the hitchhiking thing make sense, or do you think that could be possible from what you've heard so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think knowing that was in his history and that was something that he had done before, it could be possible that happened. And now what I don't see as likely is if he was murdered. I don't know that he would be murdered that close to his dad's house,
Right.
by somebody. I mean, it's not impossible. It's not like something that wouldn't happen, but I see that as less likely for somebody who's going to abduct a child to abuse them and eventually murder them would want to get as far away from the parents as possible to make that happen, just to make sure that they don't get caught.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I mean, because the parent's gonna, if you're right there, if you're like less than a mile away and you can see the site from the house, you're really not going to do that in broad daylight. I don't think, unless
It seems
you're,
very strange.
yeah, unless you're like real
definitely.
stupid.
Unless you have like a very planned out kind of like place that you know is safe nearby to hold someone captive. The one thing that it reminds me of, if that is indeed what happened somehow, is the people you hear about who were locked in somebody's basement, you know, and everybody thought they were a normal person with crazy, horrible crime being right there, when you think, well, why wouldn't they just take that person out to a cabin or a remote location? But the other thing that kind of pokes a hole in the theory is the text messages ending at 9:37. You know, why not waking up and texting his friend? Why never texting again? It seems very strange, to say the least, that you wouldn't at least make contact when you were they were planning on meeting up at 7 or 7:30 in the morning. And, you know, Dylan had told his friend, my dad's going to drop me off in the morning. And so that is a strange if that is indeed how it happened. But what's the rule of Occam's razor, where the simplest explanation
Is probably the correct one.
probably correct? After you get all the evidence, and even up to this point, the simplest explanation is not that he never texted his friend and then hitchhiked and got murdered. It's that it was most likely the other.
Well, and Vallecito's not. It's very rural. It's a very, very rural area. Durango itself is not very large. I think there's maybe 7,000, maybe 10,000 people that live there. It's a very busy place because of a lot of tourism. You know, you've got a really popular ski resort there. You've got a lot of fishing. It's in the mountains, so there's a lot of people that will come from Texas and other parts of the Southwest to go and escape the heat, go up into the mountains. But Vallecito is even outside of Durango, so it's not a very populated area. And so hitchhiking at night, he's not going to have very many opportunities to find somebody. I mean, I'm sure there are cars going by, but it's not like a very busy highway.
Right.
It's kind of an isolated area.
Yeah, and my theory is, well, not my theory, but what would make sense is if he did hitchhike and somehow got abducted, it probably would have been more like what his father recounted, that he actually did wake him up, try to wake him up. He was sleeping, and then he took off that morning at like 8-ish, maybe 9, because his dad got back at like 10 or 11. So, yeah, I did think about that. Maybe he, because I, according to the research, it did seem that Vallecito was pretty remote, and where his dad lives is even more remote. You know, his dad purposely wanted to get out of the city. So my question to myself was, could he have caught maybe the morning traffic on a bigger road once he got into town? His friend was about 7 or 8 miles away, so that hike would have been enough that you would be incentivized to, try to get a ride.
Yeah, and the terrain, it wouldn't be like a flat
Right.
7 or 8 mile walk. You're going to be going up some very steep hills. I mean, they are in the mountains.
Yeah.
So it would not be an easy walk.
And it's worth noting too, his mother Elaine really contested the idea of hitchhiking. She seemed to think it wasn't really something he was prone to doing. Now, there's the devil's advocate argument of when you're 12 or 13, you're kind of pushing the boundaries of what, you're kind of in a transition stage. As she said, he wasn't watching Nickelodeon, he was watching MTV now. And so maybe there were certain behaviors he engaged in that she wasn't fully aware of. But she really insisted, hey, this doesn't make any sense. He didn't text his friend. He didn't text me, because she's like, I have a bunch of friends up there. If he missed a ride from his dad or something, he would just texted me, hey, can I get a ride with whoever? And she would have helped him out. And I'm, going back to the Occam's razor thing, that seems a lot more plausible than a 12-year-old or 13 just packing up all his stuff, not texting anyone. But here's where I go back and forth again, is I think of really stupid things I did when I was 12,
Sure.
And things I could have done that could have gotten me killed because I was just being an idiot. And that if an outsider was looking at him, I said, well, there's no way that kid would do that. That sounds really dumb. So anyways, but we get back to, maybe we should skip to the Dr. Phil.
Sure.
In 2013, Dr. Phil it was negotiated that it would be a way for Mark and Elaine to talk with each other. Mark was just absolutely refusing to even sit down with Elaine or have a conversation with her, which again, that brings some questions to light. So this Dr. Phil show was the first time that they had talked face to face, or I think even talked on the phone since Dylan had gone missing, and which is November 29th. You have December, January, February, about 3 months, which is a long time if you have a family member missing.
And Dylan's brother is here too.
Oh, yeah. So I should mention Dylan's brother, Corey, is I think he's about 5 or 6 years older. And really, at this point, I think he was about 18 or 19. So he didn't have to, being a legal adult, he didn't have to follow any kind of custody order. Went with his mom after the divorce. Was, I think, working and trying to make a life in Denver where they were. But really, after finding those pictures, I think, and seeing that what the most probable, likely explanation for Dylan being missing, at this point, they thought Mark had maybe just hidden Dylan, or, was playing mind games of some sort. And that was the best case scenario, they thought. So Corey was very incensed and very angry at his dad, and you kind of see the tempers boil over in this Dr. Phil clip.
All right, I'm going to play it. Here we go.
I think Mark has something to do with it. I think he's either got him heading out or, done something and disposed. I strongly think that he's involved.
Why?
He hasn't done a single thing since Dylan has been gone.
Why do you say that? What has he not done?
He hasn't been to any of the benefits. He wasn't there for Dylan's birthday vigil. He hasn't helped at all with the Find Missing Dylan Redwine Fund.
And that's offensive to you?
Very.
Dr. Phil, I'd like to make a comment about the fundraiser thing. I have several people in the community in which I live that are reaching out to me on a daily basis and volunteering their time to have some involvement with a fundraiser. But somebody from this side of the room called her and told her that they didn't want her to have any involvement in anything that had anything to do with raising money and didn't want me involved in any of that.
You're wrong, and you know you're wrong. If you want to raise money for Dylan's fund and for the reward, then do it. Why does it have to be everybody else's responsibility?
It's not everybody else's responsibility.
Why can't you go do something on your own? Why do you got to have our approval?
You say he has clear motivation. What do you mean?
Dylan didn't really look up to Mark. They had a relationship, but it was never what Dylan had wanted. It was always what Mark had wanted, which was always to be on the road. Really? Never there.
Why do you call your father Mark instead of Dad or
Because he's not a father to me. A father is someone who cares for their kids and, would do anything for them. Be a role model, someone to look up to.
I believe that you're being very disrespectful, and I believe that everything that's coming out of your mouth is perpetuated by your mother.
I have my own mouth. I can say my own words.
Then use it.
I am at you. I don't like you. I hate you. And you have been nothing of a father since the last 10 years.
Wow. Whew. That was intense.
Yeah, I forgot just how emotionally charged that was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Jamie just said in the chat, what if they were arguing about Dylan really not wanting to be there and Mark accidentally killed Dylan in anger and then tried to cover it up? Which that really, once again, before I say anything, I do want to just say, until the full evidence comes out in a court, I really have tried my best, despite what my beliefs are, to say we really should respect innocent until proven guilty. But at the same time, taking all the evidence, into mind. And as I said, too, this is really one of those rabbit holes where the more you get, the more and more and more it just seems like there's a very obvious answer to this.
So Kayleen asked, how long ago was that clip? I think you said it was 2013, right?
2013, so about 3 months after Dylan had gone missing, they got on Dr. Phil. And, one of the other real kind of head scratchers is that when Dylan went missing, the police asked Elaine and Mark to take a polygraph. Elaine did. They said she passed. Mark did. They said it was questionable, some things, so they wanted him to take another one. At that point, he really showed a lot of resistance to taking another polygraph. Said he was open to it, but it never happened. So he gets to Dr. Phil, and Dr. Phil really is a proponent of polygraph, which, in my opinion, it is a tool that can be used. But so the Supreme Court, even when they reviewed the scientific viability of polygraph, said it's really no better than a coin flip. That's why you can't use it in court.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, I mean, if you know somebody is guilty, Chelsea said devil's advocate, polygraphs are trash.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to agree with that. If you know someone's guilty, it can be a tool to kind of get evidence.
So I think that, like, on its own, a polygraph is not enough to be meaningful.
Right.
But if you have a totality of evidence that is pointing in a direction, and the polygraph kind of reinforces those theories, it's still, you can't lean on it. You can't even bring it up in court.
Right.
But I think the problem with polygraphs is that people can fake them. They can. You get a sociopath in there, they can pass a polygraph.
Oh, easily. And if you
because they don't have any emotions.
And if you get somebody who is innocent, you can very easily get a false positive. So I'm no expert in it. It's one of those things where I know just enough to be dangerous in a sense. So I won't claim to be any kind of expert. But what it measures is the flight or fight response. So if you get very triggered from a question, maybe because, even though I'm innocent, I'm very nervous being here taking this test, it can suddenly trigger that. And as you said, if you're a psychopath and you don't have fight or flight response because you have no empathy and no real emotional reaction, you can very easily come up as innocent. So, but I think what's more telling in the polygraph situation is Mark's, the way he handles it, in the sense of, there's one way to handle it where it's like, I've talked to my lawyer and I've decided that because of the nature of polygraphs, I just don't want to have anything to do with them. I'm not going to take one. Instead, Mark came to Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil said he would personally administer one with a guy he really trusts, Jack Tremarco, who was an FBI guy and a polygraph guru. Mark agreed reluctantly, showed up the morning of the polygraph, claimed he was either very hungover, almost still drunk from the night before because he drank a lot, started making all these excuses for why he couldn't take it. And the polygraph administrator said, Jack said, I can't give this to you if you don't feel healthy enough to take it. And he said, I don't. And then what I think any human would interpret that as is Mark said he couldn't take the polygraph. Mark said, oh, well, I was disqualified. I didn't know I was going to be disqualified. I just said I didn't feel good. And all of a sudden they're telling me I can't take it, but I wanted to take it. It seemed very strange. So our next clip, and if you listen to the podcast, Tapes from the Darkside, season 1, we really go into, all the clips, and you can hear all the footage and all the exchange that at least made the episode. But here's just a little clip from backstage after Mark has turned down the polygraph, and it looks like just like surveillance camera in Dr. Phil's office, and they're just like shaking their heads like, this doesn't make any sense. It's Jack Tremarco, Dr. Phil, and Mark Redwine.
You should be doing backflips right now to take this polygraph test. You were the last person to have seen your son before he disappeared.
Well, and I don't believe that.
What do you believe?
I believe that the postal worker that saw Dylan later that afternoon, before I went looking for him.
No doubt in your mind.
There's no doubt.
And I read some of the stuff you said about you don't think that we gave enough attention to finding Dylan yesterday. Are you kidding me? I devoted 2 hours of national television time to try to find your son. And I have asked you to do things to eliminate yourself so we can direct resources to other people, and you won't do one damn thing to help. And you want to criticize what we're doing?
I think that was taken out of text, and I didn't have this
then
conversation.
you put it in context.
I put it in context. I was referring specifically to the conversation that was taking place on the stage with you and my ex-wife together.
What you do with your ex-wife and what you do with your son, you've got years of history before you get here with me. Don't lay that at my feet, my friend.
Wow.
Yeah, an intense Dr. Phil.
He's definitely not putting up with the BS. I couldn't help but notice a little bit of a slur in Mark's language, but definitely a lot of defensiveness. And again, I see a lot of deflecting happening. It seems to be his go-to is just deflect. It's interesting.
Yeah, he is not, he's not stupid either. It can kind of, his accent and his demeanor kind of had me thinking maybe he had a little bit of a low IQ. But I think he's just very emotionally not very intelligent. But the words he speaks sometimes are very cunning, and he has a very quick response to most things.
Yeah.
Jamie says, I love how to Mark everyone is responsible but him. Yeah, and that's a very frustrating thing is even in the Dr. Phil show when Elaine is just point blank like, can you take some responsibility for this? This was on your watch. And Mark will say, this is not a quote or anything, but he'll say something like, well, you sent him without a coat, and you knew it was cold. Like, why did you? It's all, like you said, it's always a deflection.
He's deflecting, which is all, for me, it reminds me of my mom's ex-husband. He did that a lot. When the heat was on him, he would start blaming other people for different stuff to make the conversation change and get off of him. And so that, I think that's why I'm sensitive to it and why I see it, so clearly. Kaylin said it's amazing that he agreed to go on Dr. Phil, but did not try to prove himself innocent.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the, when I talk about him maybe being intelligent but emotionally stunted, it is strange that it's like he gets himself in these situations that seem like, if you didn't want to take the polygraph, we can still hear you.
There you are.
Oh, okay. If you didn't want to take the polygraph, there's ways you can just approach that situation with, I think an outsider like me or somebody looking in would be like, okay, that makes sense. But to go and then agree to take it and then get hammered, and then, so even to blow your mind a little more, I'm not sure how much you know, but he comes back on Dr. Phil. I believe it was a year or two later, and basically says, I don't understand why everybody's saying I refuse to take a polygraph. I will take one. He's in a video conference. He didn't fly out to the show, but Elaine's there, Corey's there again, and Dr. Phil straight up calls his bluff again and is like, I will fly a team out anywhere to you. You name the time, it's done. And immediately, wow. I didn't pull this clip up, but it's pretty amazing. Immediately, Mark is like, well, I don't know if that's going to be, and you're like, holy shit, man. Like, I think it might come from narcissism, thinking you can talk your way out of things that you can't. But it is very curious. I think that Kayleen, how do you
Kayleen.
pronounce Kayleen? Really said it perfectly. You know, it's amazing. He went on, but he didn't even try to prove himself innocent. It's yeah.
Oh man, well, it's a tragic case, and I think now there's been a lot of delays in the trial. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or do you have anything else you want to go into before we?
Yeah, we could just go ahead and say that. And Jamie is mentioning narcissistic personality disorder. It is something that has crossed my mind more than once watching Mark's interactions. And I don't really think this is any kind of spoiler. Like I said, I don't like using that word, but he was arrested and has not been not yet gone to trial. But like when I was first read about this case, I did kind of see that he had been arrested in 2017, and COVID obviously has hit. He had a number of delays to begin with anyways, which are very strange coincidences in that his first defense public defender was charged with domestic battery and had to be removed from the case, then was proved innocent and came back to the case. So with that caused a big delay with having to assign a new public defender and then having to have a motion to see if the guy could rejoin the case. And then what was another one? I can't remember. I think we covered it. There was another delay. And then right as the trial was about to actually start, COVID hit in May. So right as we were releasing the very first episode, or the first few episodes, the trial was supposed to start, and I was eager to cover that as part of the case, but COVID hit, as we all know, around this time last year, and then just delay after delay. And unfortunately, there was another delay just this last month in April. So it's been pushed back again. Everybody's eager to see a court case go forward. It's going to be a jury trial, most likely. There has been evidence that the prosecution claims they have that seems very overwhelming. But again, I would urge everyone to take that with a grain of salt, just because of we know that's not beyond police to plant evidence or, mishandle things. So it does seem to be overwhelming, the case against Mark Redwine right now, but who knows? I don't know. There could be evidence that we haven't heard, but if you do want a really in-depth look at it, there is a 9-part podcast. It's my show called Tapes from the Darkside. We go into pretty much every aspect you can think of, but we try to do it in a compelling way that is not just a regurgitation of facts, but trying to bring the story of life to life. And it's on Apple, Spotify. If you search Tapes from the Darkside, it should come up. That's our first season. And if you do want to check it out, start with episode 1, Dylan Goes Missing. And that one's about 30 minutes. So if you give it a try, if you don't like it, you haven't wasted a whole day. But you might enjoy it and listen to more of it.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and for hanging out with me. And it's been cool connecting with you and getting to listen to your show. I highly recommend it. It's very well done. I am a huge fan. So we're going to play a little promo for your newest season here in a second. But before we do that, is there anything else you want to say to my listeners or to the people that are watching?
Not really. I just really appreciate you having me on, and a huge fan of your podcast as well. I remembered I discovered it right around when I was putting out my first few episodes, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. I really enjoy the concept of having a podcast surrounding an area, and True Consequences does it really well. Oklahoma Side,
Mm-hmm.
I think
It's another
called.
one. Yep.
Another one. I'm sure there's plenty of other great ones, but yeah, man, it's just been a pleasure. The promo it's kind of like it's really for season 3, so it's a totally different case than this one. And even though this inspiration for Tapes from the Darkside comes from an anthology show, we actually do one case per season and go really in depth. And so this next case is a family annihilator, very tragic case out of Florida. Almost all true crime is tragic, but it's 6 grandchildren and a daughter. It's one of the very few family annihilators who was a grandparent.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2014, he murdered his 6 grandchildren and his daughter in Bell, Florida, a very small town. And once again, we just try to understand it, not that it can really be fully understood, but what could have been the motivation? Can we gain can we learn anything? Are there any insights outside of the headline that we usually all just see as a true crime headline that is very sad, but is there any more? Is there any, obviously there's more to the story, but what I've found in any of these cases I've investigated is underneath the surface of something that really repulses us or makes us very angry is usually a very sad story, but there usually is an explanation for it, and I think we can learn something from looking at it, even though it can be very painful and uncomfortable to look at sometimes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening and watching. And check out this promo and stay safe, New Mexico.
Season 3 of Tapes from the Darkside
Gilchrist County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
brings you a new tale of true crime.
Yes, ma'am. I just shot my daughter and shot all my grandkids, and I'll be sitting on my step, and then when you get here, I'm going to shoot myself.
Tapes from the Darkside is a serialized true crime podcast. Each season, we take one case and investigate in depth, using original source audio and legal documentation to break down exactly what occurred, the potential motive behind each crime, and the judicial implications for those involved. This is Season 3, The Spirit Family Massacre.
I think everyone has a bit of a fascination with the dark side.